Good day, children. Today we are dealing with the first chapter of Snapshots, The Summer of the Beautiful White Horse by William Saroyan. This is a short story from the collection My Name is Aram. It narrates the story of two boys, Aram and Murad, who belongs to a poor Armenian tribe. The narrator is Aram, a 9-year-old Armenian boy who is a member of the Garoglanian tribe living among the lush fruit orchards and vineyards of the San Joaquin Valley of California. The hallmarks of this tribe are trust and honesty. Para 1. One day, back there in the good old days, when I was 9 and the world was full of every imaginable kind of magnificence, and life was still a delightful and mysterious dream, my cousin Murad, who was considered crazy by everybody who knew him except me, came to my house at 4 in the morning and woke me up, tapping on the window of my room. Aram begins by narrating an incident that happened when he was 9, and those were days when he had a carefree attitude and enjoyed life to the fullest. I'm sure if you look back, you will also remember that age of your life with nostalgia. That is the time when life is magnificent and delightful. Aram too experienced the same. One day, early in the morning at 4, his elder cousin Murad tapped on his window and woke him up. Para 2. Aram, he said. I jumped out of bed and looked out of the window. I couldn't believe what I saw. It wasn't morning yet, but it was summer, and with daybreak not many minutes around the corner of the world, it was light enough for me to know I wasn't dreaming. My cousin Murad was sitting on a beautiful white horse. I stuck my head out of the window and rubbed my eyes. Yes, he said in Armenian. It's a horse. You are not dreaming. Make it quick if you want to ride. So Aram got up and looked out of the window. It was still dark as dawn was only approaching. But in that faded light of summer, he could see Murad sitting on a beautiful white horse. And he was sure it was not a dream. Unable to believe what he was seeing, he stood there rubbing his eyes. Murad ordered him in their native language, Armenian, to join him if he wanted to go for a ride. Para 3. I knew my cousin Murad enjoyed being alive more than anybody else who had ever fallen into the world by mistake. But this was more than even I could believe. In the first place, my earliest memories had been memories of horses, and my first longings had been longings to ride. This was the wonderful part. In the second place, we were poor. So here the narrator describes why he was unable to believe the sight he saw. Definitely, Murad was an adventurous kind and had a zest for living. But there was no way he could get a horse to ride. Aram himself was crazy for horses, and he had always longed to ride one. But his dream was never fulfilled as their family was too poor. Paragraph 4. This was the part that wouldn't permit me to believe what I saw. We were poor. We had no money. Our whole tribe was poverty-stricken. Every branch of the Garoglanian family was living in the most amazing and comical poverty in the world. Nobody could understand where we ever got money enough to keep us with food in our bellies. Not even the old men of the family. Most important of all, though, we were famous for our honesty. We had been famous for our honesty for something like 11 centuries. even when we had been the wealthiest family in what we like to think was the world. We were proud first, honest next, and after that, we believed in right and wrong. None of us would take advantage of anybody in the world, let alone steal. So we see more characteristics of the Garoglanian tribe. They were miserably poor, and the narrator finds it amazing and funny how they managed to survive. They were leading a hand to mouth sustenance, but the poverty never made them lose their most important characteristic, honesty, which was instilled in the members of their tribe for 11 centuries. And at that time, they were not poor. He says their tribe was proud, honest, was able to differentiate between right and wrong, never took advantage of others, and never stole. Paragraph 5. Consequently, even though I could see the horse so magnificent, even though I could smell it so lovely, even though I could hear it breathing so exciting, I couldn't believe the horse had anything to do with my cousin Murad, or with me, or with any of the other members of our family asleep or awake, because I knew my cousin Murad couldn't have bought the horse, and if he couldn't have bought it, he must have stolen it, and I refused to believe he had stolen it. The narrator was delighted to see the horse, but he refused to believe that his cousin had stolen the horse, as he was too poor to buy it, because any member of the Garoglanian tribe is too honest to steal a horse. Paragraph 6, I stared first at my cousin and then at the horse. There was a pious stillness and humor in each of them, which on the one hand delighted me and on the other frightened me. Murad, I said, where did you steal this horse? Leap out of the window, he said, if you want to ride. It was true then. He had stolen the horse. There was no question about it. He had come to invite me to ride or not as I chose. Well, it seemed to me stealing a horse for a ride was not the same thing as stealing something else, such as money. For all I knew, maybe it wasn't stealing at all. If you were crazy about horses, the way my cousin Murad and I were, it wasn't stealing. It wouldn't become stealing until we offered to sell the horse, which of course I knew we would never do. So Aram kept gazing at Murad and the horse with contrasting emotions. Delighted that he could fulfill his desire of riding a horse, and at the same time dreading whether his cousin had indeed stolen, compromising their famed characteristic honesty. He finally asked the inevitable question to Murad, from where he had stolen the horse. Murad does not reply, instead urges him to leap out of the window if he wanted to go for a ride. Now the narrator is convinced that the horse is stolen as Murad evades his question. The narrator's desire for riding the horse overrules his morality of honesty, and now our young and innocent narrator justifies Murad's act of stealing a horse. He says, stealing a horse is different from stealing money. A horse is stolen to ride, but if you sell the horse, it becomes stealing, and that Murad would never do so. And he concludes, this is not stealing. Paragraph 7. Let me put on some clothes, I said. All right, he said, but hurry. I leaped into my clothes. I jumped down to the yard from the window and leaped up onto the horse behind my cousin Murad. That year, we lived at the edge of town on Walnut Avenue. Behind our house was a country, vineyards, orchards, irrigation ditches, and country roads. In less than 3 minutes, we were on Olive Avenue, and then the horse began to trot. The air was new and lovely to breathe. The feel of the horse running was wonderful. My cousin Murad, who was considered one of the craziest members of our family, began to sing, I mean, he began to roar. So now the narrator justifies Murad's act, and Aram joins him for the ride. They rode through the path behind the house and they passed vineyards, orchards, irrigation ditches, and country roads. When they reached Olive Avenue, the horse began to trot, means to run at a gentle pace. Both the boys were elated at the experience, and Murad expressed his happiness by singing in a high-pitched voice which sounded like a roar. Paragraph 8. Every family has a crazy streak in it somewhere, and my cousin Murad was considered the natural descendant of the crazy streak in our tribe. Before him was the Uncle Khusro, an enormous man with a powerful head of black hair and the largest moustache in the San Joaquin Valley, a man so furious in temper, so irritable, so impatient that he stopped anyone from talking by roaring. It's no harm, pay no attention to it. That was all, no matter what anybody happened to be talking about. Once, it was his own son, Arak, running 8 blocks to the barber shop where his father was having his moustache trimmed, to tell him their house was on fire. This man Khusro sat up in the chair and roared, "It's no harm, pay no attention to it." The barber said, "But the boy says your house is on fire." So Khusro roared, "Enough, it's no harm, I say." So he goes on to describe how certain members of the family have a crazy streak or act eccentric at times. Murad was one. He had inherited his craziness from their uncle Khosrow, who was irritable and short-tempered and did not tolerate when others spoke loudly. Instantly his retort would be, "It's no harm, pay no attention." He describes how Khusro's son Arak came running to his father, who was at a barber shop one day, to report that their house was on fire. He had the same reply, "It's no harm, pay no attention." Even the barber tried to convince him to say that his house was on fire. He roared again that it is no harm. Paragraph 9. My cousin Murad was considered the natural descendant of this man, although Murad's father was Zorab, who was practical and nothing else. That's how it was in our tribe. A man could be the father of his son's flesh, but that did not mean that he was also the father of his spirit. The distribution of the various kinds of spirit of our tribe had been from the beginning capricious and vagrant. So he goes on to describe that inheritance of genes in their tribe was also very fanciful, because a crazy streak kept descending to members of other family and was not inherited by the son. And that is why Murad inherited the crazy streak from his uncle Khusro and not from his father Zorab, who was a practical-minded person. Paragraph 10. We rode, and my cousin Murad sang. For all anybody knew, we were still in the old country where, at least according to some of our neighbors, we belonged. We let the horse run as long as it felt like running. At last, my cousin Murad said, "Get down. I want to ride alone." "Will you let me ride alone?" I asked. "That is up to the horse," my cousin said. "Get down." "The horse will let me ride," I said. "We shall see," he said. "Don't forget that I have a way with a horse." "Well," I said, "any way you have with a horse, I have also." "For the sake of your safety," he said, "let's hope so. Get down." "All right," I said, "but remember, you've got to let me try to ride alone." So they continued riding the horse through the countryside. After a while, Murad asked Aram to get down as he wanted to ride alone. Aram requested that he too wanted to ride alone. Murad said that was up to the horse. The narrator was confident that the horse would let him. Murad reminded him that he had a way with the horse. Aram replied that any way Murad had, he too had. As Murad started riding alone, Aram requested him once again to give him a chance to ride alone. Paragraph 11. I got down and my cousin Murad kicked his heels into the horse and shouted, "Wazir, run!" The horse stood on its hind legs, snorted, and burst into a fury of speed that was the loveliest thing I had ever seen. My cousin Murad raced the horse across a field of dry grass to an irrigation ditch, crossed the ditch on the horse, and 5 minutes later returned dripping wet. The sun was coming up. "Now it's my turn to ride," I said. My cousin Murad got off the horse. "Ride," he said. Now Murad gave the orders to the horse in his native language and took off like a professional. He rode the horse across the field of dry grass to an irrigation ditch and returned. It was dawn by then. Now he handed over the horse to his cousin Aram so that he could ride. Paragraph 12. I leaped to the back of the horse and for a moment knew the most awful fear imaginable. The horse did not move. "Kick into his muzzles," my cousin Murad said. "What are you waiting for? We've got to take him back before everybody in the world is up and about." I kicked into the muzzles of the horse. Once again it reared and snorted. Then it began to run. I didn't know what to do. Instead of running across the field to the irrigation ditch, the horse ran down the road to the vineyard of Dikran Halabian, where it began to leap over vines. The horse leaped over 7 vines before I fell. Then it continued running. Now Aram leaped to the back of the horse, excited and in fear. He emulated Murad's action, but the horse did not budge. He followed Murad's instruction to kick into the horse's muscles, and the horse took off. Instead of taking Murad's route, the horse ran towards Dikran Halabian's house and leaped over his several vines. By then, Aram fell from the horse, and the horse continued to ride. Paragraph 13. My cousin Murad came running down the road. "I'm not worried about you," he shouted. "We have got to get that horse. You go this way and I will go this way. If you come upon him, be kindly. I'll be near." I continued down the road and my cousin Murad went across the field towards the irrigation ditch. It took him half an hour to find the horse and bring him back. "All right," he said, "jump on. The whole world is awake now." "What will we do?" I said. "Well," he said, "we'll either take him back or hide him until tomorrow morning." He didn't sound worried, and I knew he would hide him and not take him back, not for a while at any rate. Now, they were eager to get the horse which had run away, and so they decided to go in the opposite direction in search of the horse. After half an hour, Murad came back with the horse. By now, the sun had risen, and they decided to hide the horse, not return it. Paragraph 14. "Where will we hide him?" I said. "I know a place," he said. "How long ago did you steal this horse?" I said. It suddenly dawned on me that he had been taking these early morning rides for some time and had come for me this morning only because he knew how much I longed to ride. "Who said anything about stealing a horse?" he said. "Anyhow," I said, "how long ago did you begin riding every morning?" "Not until this morning," he said. "Are you telling the truth?" I said. "Of course not," he said. "But if we are found out, that's what you are to say. I don't want both of us to be liars. All you know is that we started riding this morning." "All right," I said. So on Aram's inquiry where the horse must be hidden, Murad replied he knew a place. Suddenly Aram realized that Murad had actually stolen the horse a few days ago and had been riding alone. He kept questioning, but Murad replied that it was enough that Aram had minimum details so that if in case they are found out, both of them need not be called thieves and liars. Paragraph 15. He walked the horse quietly to the barn of a deserted vineyard, which at one time had been the pride of a farmer named Fetwahian. There were some oats and dry alfalfa in the barn. We began walking home. It wasn't easy, he said, to get the horse to behave so nicely. At first, it wanted to run wild. But as I've told you, I have a way with a horse. I can get it to want to do anything I want it to do. Horses understand me. How do you do it? I said. I have an understanding with a horse, he said. Yes, but what sort of an understanding? I said. A simple and honest one, he said. Well, I said, I wish I knew how to reach an understanding like that with a horse. You are still a small boy, he said. When you get to be 13, you will know how to do it. So Murad hides the horse in the barn of a deserted vineyard owned by the farmer Fetwahian and feeds it. As he returned home, he says that it was not very easy because the horse had been a wild one, a very aggressive one, and how he had managed to tame it. So Aram inquires with his elder cousin how he handled the horse so successfully. Murad replied that he had an understanding, a simple and honest understanding with the horse. Murad consoled him that as he grew up, when he would be 13, he too would develop such an understanding. Paragraph 16. I went home and ate a hearty breakfast. That afternoon, my uncle Kozrov came to our house for coffee and cigarettes. He sat in the parlor sipping and smoking and remembering the old country. Then another visitor arrived, a farmer named John Byro, an Assyrian who out of loneliness had learned to speak Armenian. My mother brought the lonely visitor coffee and tobacco, and he rolled a cigarette and sipped and smoked, and then at last, sighing sadly, he said, My white horse, which was stolen last month, is still gone. I cannot understand it. So Aram went home, had a hearty breakfast. That afternoon, his uncle Kozrov visited them. As he sat in the parlor sipping and smoking, another visitor, farmer John Byro from the Assyrian tribe, visited them. He had learned Armenian out of loneliness and he was a frequent visitor to their house. He was sad and told Kozrov that the horse which he had lost the previous month was still not found. Paragraph 17. My uncle Kozrov became very irritated and shouted, It's no harm. What is the loss of a horse? Haven't we all lost the homeland? What is this crying over a horse? That may be all right for you, a city dweller, to say, John Byro said. But what of my surrey? What good is a surrey without a horse? Pay no attention to it, my uncle Kozrov roared. I walked 10 miles to get here, John Byro said. You have legs, my uncle Kozrov shouted. My left leg pains me, the farmer said. Pay no attention to it, my uncle Kozrov roared. That horse cost me $60, the farmer said. I spit on money, my uncle Kozrov said. He got up and stalked out of the house, slamming the screen door. My mother explained. He has a gentle heart, she said. It is simply that he is homesick and such a large man. The farmer went away and I ran over to my cousin Murad's house. So Kozrov, as we know, is easily irritated. And so that day when Byro complains about having lost his horse, he gets irritated at that point also and says, It's no harm. Byro further complains that his carriage is a waste. Saray means carriage, is a waste without his horse. To which Uncle Kozrov says, Pay no attention to it. Byro says that he had to walk 10 miles to reach there and his legs ached. Uncle Kozrov gets agitated and walks out, slamming the door. Aram's mother consoled Farmer Byro. Overhearing all this, Aram realizes that the stolen horse is actually Byro's and runs to Murad's house. Paragraph 18. He was sitting under a peach tree trying to repair the hurt wing of a young robin which could not fly. He was talking to the bird. What is it? He said. The farmer, John Byrow, I said. He visited our house. He wants his horse. You have had it a month. I want you to promise not to take it back until I learn to ride. It will take you a year to learn to ride, my cousin Murad said. We could keep the horse a year, I said. My cousin Murad leaped to his feet. What? He roared. Are you inviting a member of the Garoglanian family to steal? The horse must go back to its true honor. When? I said. In 6 months at the latest, he said. He threw the bird into the air. The bird tried hard, almost fell twice, but at last flew away high and straight. So when Aram reached Murad's house, he was tending to a young robin, a bird, which had hurt its wing. Aram tells what he overheard and requests Murad not to return the horse till he had learned riding. Murad says it would take 1 year for Aram to learn riding and is annoyed when Aram tells him to retain the horse for a year. So there the intent of Murad is very clear. He hadn't stolen the horse. He had taken the horse because he loved riding and he planned to return the horse back to John Byrow. Finally, Aram and Murad agree to keep the horse for maximum 6 months. That is the time by which Aram has to learn riding. Paragraph 19. Early every morning for 2 weeks, my cousin Murad and I took the horse out of the barn of the deserted vineyard where we were hiding it and rode it. And every morning the horse, when it was my turn to ride alone, leaped over grapevines and small trees and threw me and ran away. Nevertheless, I hoped in time to learn to ride the way my cousin Murad rode. One morning on the way to Fetwahian's deserted vineyard, we ran into the farmer John Byrow, who was on his way to town. Let me do the talking, my cousin Murad said. I have a way with farmers. So after that, every morning they started practicing, but Aram was still unsuccessful. Every time he tried riding the horse would throw him down. So one morning, as they were taking the horse back to the barn, they came across John Byrow, the owner of the horse. Murad said that he would do the talking as he had a way with farmers too. Paragraph 20. Good morning, John Byrow, my cousin Murad said to the farmer. The farmer studied the horse eagerly. Good morning, son of my friends, he said. What is the name of your horse? My heart, my cousin Murad said in Armenian. A lovely name, John Byrow said, for a lovely horse. I could swear it is the horse that was stolen from me many weeks ago. May I look into its mouth? Of course, Murad said. The farmer looked into the mouth of the horse. Tooth for tooth, he said. I would swear it is my horse if I didn't know your parents. The fame of your family for honesty is well known to me. Yet the horse is a twin of my horse. A suspicious man would believe his eyes instead of his heart. Good day, my young friends. Good day, John Byrow, my cousin Murad said. So Murad said he would do the talking to the farmer. The boys greeted Byrow and he greeted them back. He asked the name of the horse and Murad said they had named the horse My Heart in their native Armenian language. A horse is usually recognized by looking at the tooth, and Byrow said that the horse looked like his horse and requested the permission of the boys to check inside the mouth to verify whether that was his horse. He said that the horse was a twin of his horse and looked exactly the same. Since he was not suspicious by nature, he wanted to believe that it was not his horse. Moreover, he knew the boys' parents. The boys were from a family famed for their honesty, and so he wanted to believe that these boys could never have stolen the horse. Saying so, John Byrow walked away. Paragraph 21. Early the following morning, we took the horse to John Byrow's vineyard and put it in the barn. The dogs followed us around without making a sound. The dogs, I whispered to my cousin Murad. I thought they would bark. They would at somebody else, he said. I have a way with dogs. My cousin Murad put his arms around the horse, pressed his nose into the horse's nose, patted it, then he went away. That afternoon, John Biro came to our house in his surrey and showed my mother the horse that had been stolen and returned. I do not know what to think, he said. The horse is stronger than ever, better tempered too. I thank God my Uncle Khosrow, who was in the parlor, became irritated and shouted, "Quiet, man, quiet. Your horse has been returned. Pay no attention to it." So next day, the boys stealthily took the horse back to John Biro's barn, as they were guilt-ridden. The dogs did not attack them, as Murad had a way with the dogs too. So very affectionately, Murad bids goodbye to his horse. That afternoon, John Biro visited the narrator's home and conveyed the good news to Aram's mother that the horse was returned. He also told excitedly that the horse appeared tamed and was in better spirits. Uncle Khosrow, who was in the parlor and was listening to all this, was annoyed at the noise and shouted, "The horse has been returned. Pay no attention." So Uncle Khosrow, for anything that happens, keeps saying the same thing. So that brings us to the end of the chapter. Please write the notes and the assignment and upload it in a single file in the classroom. I hope all of you enjoyed the lesson. Thank you so much.